It did not begin with a statement. It began with smoke. Thick, black smoke tearing upward above Iranian skies that were already heavy with tension. Wednesday afternoon, February 18th, 2026. A blast outside Tehran. Windows shattered miles away. Phones lifted, cameras shaking, and then silence. No immediate briefing, no numbers, no explanation, just smoke rising while officials said nothing. And when officials go quiet, it usually means the story is bigger than the blast itself. Shahryar was not random. It was the latest point in a pattern. Initial reports confirmed at least 1 dead and 14 injured after another explosion in the southern port city of Bandar Abbas. An 8-story building damaged, cars crushed, a child killed. State media called the cause under investigation, but online footage told a different story. Thick plumes, chaos, whispers that the building may have housed someone important. Rumors that a commander linked to the Revolutionary Guard Navy was the real target. And within hours, videos showing a security officer carried on a stretcher disappeared, deleted, scrubbed. When footage vanishes that fast, questions multiply. And it did not stop there. Explosions the same day in Parand near Tehran, another in Sabzavar in the northeast. 3 locations, sites tied to ammunition, fuel, structures connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. When multiple military-linked facilities erupt within hours, coincidence becomes thin. The narrative shifts. This begins to look less like accident and more like coordination, or something unraveling from inside. Before we connect Shahryar, Bandar Abbas, Parand, and beyond, make sure you subscribe and press like. Because what is unfolding inside Iran may not be isolated incidents. It may be a developing sequence, one that could shift the balance across the region. The Shahryar site reportedly stored ammunition and military fuel linked to the IRGC. That detail changes everything. Ammunition does not quietly burn, it detonates. It sends shockwaves. And Shahryar lies just miles from Tehran. An explosion of that scale so close to the capital is not minor. It is either a profound failure or a breach that goes far deeper than officials are ready to admit. The wave did not begin on February 18th. It began on January 31st. Bandar Abbas, Karaj, Parand, multiple fires and blasts on the same day. Then February 2nd, a large fire in a marketplace in northwest Tehran. February 7th, a carpentry workshop inside a military complex in eastern Tehran engulfed in flames, smoke visible across the capital. February 10th, reports of additional industrial fires. And then the massive detonation at Shahid Raji port in Bandar Abbas, roughly 10 days before Shahryar, killing at least 70 people and injuring hundreds. Officials suggested negligence in chemical storage, but the force described by witnesses sounded more like a controlled blast than a warehouse mishap. Consider the location of that port. It handles oil exports. It handles logistics. It connects military and economic arteries. A blast of that magnitude sends a signal, whether intentional or not. And when ammunition depots in underground mountain tunnels in Kazarun erupt with explosions felt 50 kilometers away, it challenges the assumption that underground equals secure. Storage carved into mountain slopes burned. Windows shattered across surrounding towns. The Imam Sajjad Ranger Brigade's facilities compromised. Underground tunnels are designed to withstand airstrikes, yet something reached them. Now overlay this timeline with another timeline that Iranian authorities would prefer remain separate. December 28th, 2025. Protests begin January 8th and 9th. Reports indicate tens of thousands of protesters killed in what human rights organizations described as one of the largest street massacres in the country's modern history. Live ammunition, shotguns, heavy DSHK machine guns reportedly used against crowds. Doctors stating security forces were shooting to kill. Orders allegedly traced back to the highest levels of command. By mid-January, the streets were silent again, and roughly 2 weeks later, the explosions began. Timing in geopolitics is rarely accidental. If the January events created internal fractures, anger, or quiet defiance within the security structure itself, retaliation could take many forms. Ammunition depots do not explode without access. Underground facilities are not breached without knowledge. Senior commanders are not injured in residential buildings without intelligence. That opens two equally unsettling possibilities: internal sabotage by resistance elements with insiders, or external operations conducted with precision inside Iranian territory. Both scenarios project vulnerability. Both undermine the aura of control. Meanwhile, nuclear negotiations remain tense. Reports of American carrier strike groups repositioning in the region, diplomatic language tightening. When ammunition depots ignite near Tehran during stalled negotiations, it creates psychological leverage. It whispers that infrastructure can be touched, that assets are not untouchable. Whether that whisper originates domestically or internationally changes the implications but not the pressure. State media's response has been restrained. Gas leaks, industrial accidents, investigations ongoing, no casualty numbers, no confirmation of specific military losses. Silence can be strategic, but it can also be revealing. If 3 simultaneous blasts hit IRGC-linked sites and the response is minimal, it suggests narrative containment is prioritized over transparency. Social media videos disappear. Accounts are restricted. Internet speeds fluctuate, yet fragments slip through. Images of smoke, of injured personnel, of stunned civilians filming from rooftops. Think about morale inside a security apparatus when commanders are allegedly targeted at home. Think about cohesion when ammunition reserves burn. Think about readiness when depots and tunnels are compromised. Military structures rely as much on perception as on firepower. If personnel begin to question whether facilities are secure, if officers wonder whether colleagues are loyal, if technicians fear infiltration, operational effectiveness erodes quietly. At the same time, militant activity unrelated to these blasts has been reported. Assassinations of local officials, attacks on law enforcement personnel in different provinces. The existence of armed opposition groups with regional networks complicates attribution. A fragmented environment allows multiple actors to operate simultaneously, creating layers of ambiguity that can be exploited. And here is the central tension. Every explanation carries risk. If it is internal sabotage, the regime faces a fracture from within. If it is external precision action, then foreign intelligence services or military units are operating inside Iranian borders with alarming reach. If it is incompetence and negligence, then the military-industrial infrastructure is dangerously unstable. None of those narratives project strength. The psychological effect extends beyond the security establishment. Civilians watching smoke rise from multiple cities begin to ask questions. If ammunition facilities are vulnerable, what else is vulnerable? If ports explode, what about economic lifelines? If underground tunnels fail, what about strategic assets elsewhere? Silence feeds speculation. Speculation feeds anxiety. Anxiety spreads faster than fire. And yet, amid all of this, there has been no sweeping official acknowledgement of a coordinated campaign. No unified explanation tying Shahryar, Parand, Sabzevar, Kazarun, Bandar Abbas together. Each incident compartmentalized. Each report minimized. That compartmentalization may be deliberate. It may be an attempt to prevent the public from seeing the pattern. Because once a population sees a pattern, the narrative shifts from isolated misfortune to systemic vulnerability. We are watching a sequence that began with smoke and continues with unanswered questions. Ammunition depots, military bases, ports, residential buildings linked to senior figures. The frequency accelerated after the January protests ended. The targets share common institutional ties. The official explanations remain fragmented. The silence remains heavy. And if you are following this carefully, you understand that this story is not about one explosion. It is about the possibility that Iran's internal stability and external posture are being tested simultaneously. It is about whether this is retaliation, covert warfare, structural decay, or some combination of all three. It is about whether the pattern continues, escalates, or abruptly stops. Make sure you subscribe and press so you do not miss the next update, because what is unfolding inside Iran is larger than any single blast, and the pattern is still developing, and the next development may change the entire equation. What makes this second phase even more unsettling is not only the physical damage, but the strategic depth of what may be unfolding beneath the surface. Because when ammunition depots burn, when underground tunnel networks are compromised, When ports that serve as economic arteries detonate with such force, the immediate destruction is only the visible layer. The invisible layer is disruption. Logistics chains fracture quietly, supply routes are rerouted, emergency inspections slow movement of materiel, commanders shift assets defensively instead of projecting outward, and in a system built on layered deterrence, even small disruptions accumulate into measurable strategic drag. The question is no longer simply who is behind the blasts, but what cumulative effect they are designed to produce. Are these strikes meant to degrade operational readiness before a larger geopolitical confrontation? Are they warnings calibrated to avoid full escalation while still inflicting psychological pressure? Or are they the opening signals of something far more coordinated that has not yet revealed its full scope? Consider the geographic spread once again, but now through a strategic lens rather than a chronological one. Southern ports tied to exports and naval logistics. Western and southwestern sites near Tehran connected to ammunition storage. Northeastern paramilitary bases. Mountain tunnel complexes carved into terrain specifically designed to withstand conventional strikes. This is not a single vulnerability being exposed. This is multiple layers of infrastructure being tested across different regions and functions. Naval logistics, ground force ammunition reserves, urban command-adjacent facilities. When separate components of a military ecosystem begin failing in close succession, analysts begin asking whether someone is mapping pressure points in real time. At the same time, internal security operations inside the country have reportedly intensified. Road checkpoints increased. Intelligence sweeps widened. Communication monitoring expanded. Yet explosions continued after those measures were implemented. That suggests either operational sophistication by whoever is responsible or a lag in internal counterintelligence adaptation. And adaptation time matters, because the longer a pattern continues without interception, the more confidence the perpetrators gain. Confidence breeds escalation. Escalation invites response. Response can miscalculate. And miscalculation in this environment carries consequences far beyond national borders. There is also an economic dimension that cannot be ignored. Insurance premiums for shipping through southern Iranian ports do not remain static after large-scale detonations. Investors observe instability. Currency markets react to uncertainty. Energy traders factor in potential disruptions. Even rumors of sabotage near strategic export hubs influence global energy pricing models. So even if the physical damage is contained, the ripple effect touches financial calculations worldwide. Was that intended? If external actors are involved, economic signaling could be part of the calculus. If internal resistance groups are acting, they may be seeking to amplify domestic instability by triggering financial stress alongside military embarrassment. Now examine morale from another angle. The Revolutionary Guard is not merely a military body. It is deeply intertwined with economic networks, industrial holdings, and regional influence structures. When its infrastructure is hit, the damage is not purely tactical. It is symbolic. It chips at the image of impermeability that has been cultivated for decades. And symbolism, particularly after a period of internal unrest, is potent. If segments of the population believe that the apparatus responsible for suppressing protests is no longer untouchable, perception shifts. Perception can be as destabilizing as physical force. There is also the timing relative to international negotiations. When talks stall and parallel explosions occur domestically, adversaries read that in multiple ways. Some interpret it as covert leverage, others see internal fragility. Diplomatic counterparts assess whether the state across the table is negotiating from a position of consolidated control or from a position of distraction and internal strain. That assessment shapes concessions, ultimatums, and timelines. So even silence becomes a strategic variable. Another layer is technological. Underground ammunition facilities are typically reinforced, monitored, and secured through layered access control. Breaching such sites requires either insider access, high-grade intelligence, or advanced technical capability. That narrows the field of plausible actors. Yet public attribution has not occurred. The absence of overt blame may itself be strategic. Publicly accusing a foreign intelligence service without decisive proof risks escalation. Publicly admitting internal sabotage risks, signaling fracture. So the narrative remains suspended between ambiguity and denial. Meanwhile, Online discourse inside the country reportedly oscillates between skepticism and defiance. Despite internet slowdowns and content removals, fragments of footage persist. Conversations speculate about infiltration, about covert campaigns, about retaliation for the January events. The memory of those days has not faded. Tens of thousands reportedly killed in 2 days created a psychological rupture. Ruptures do not close quietly. They linger beneath the surface, influencing how events are interpreted. When explosions follow such a rupture, many interpret them through that lens. We must also consider the operational implications if ammunition reserves are indeed compromised at scale. Replacement logistics are not instantaneous. Production facilities must compensate. Transport routes must be secured. Temporary shortages in certain categories of munitions can alter defensive posture calculations. Even if the overall strategic arsenal remains intact, localized depletion affects readiness assessments. Military planners adjust contingency scenarios accordingly. Adjustments consume bandwidth. Bandwidth diverted inward reduces outward flexibility. At this point, observers are tracking not just whether explosions continue, but whether their tempo increases, decreases, or shifts geographically. Does the pattern remain concentrated around military-linked infrastructure? Does it expand to cyber domains? Does it extend toward energy infrastructure? Or does it abruptly halt, suggesting either containment or the completion of a limited objective? Each trajectory implies a different strategic storyline. There is also the regional dimension. Neighboring states monitor these developments closely. Any perception of weakened internal stability can influence proxy dynamics, border postures, and intelligence activity in adjacent territories. If adversaries believe infrastructure vulnerabilities exist, they may test other pressure points. If allies perceive instability, they may recalibrate their own security planning. Regional balance is sensitive to even subtle shifts. And here is the uncomfortable possibility that analysts are quietly considering. What if multiple actors are operating simultaneously without coordination? Internal resistance targeting one set of facilities, external intelligence probing another, opportunistic factions exploiting chaos. In such an environment, attribution becomes murky, and responses risk misidentifying the source of pressure. That kind of layered ambiguity is one of the most dangerous strategic conditions because it complicates retaliation calculus. We are not merely witnessing isolated blasts. We are observing stress lines across military infrastructure, across narrative control, across economic confidence, across international negotiation dynamics. Whether these stress lines converge into a larger fracture remains uncertain. But the sequence has already altered perception, and perception, once altered, does not revert easily. So ask yourself, if this is sabotage, who benefits most from prolonged ambiguity? If this is covert foreign action, why remain deniable rather than demonstrative? If this is internal decay, how deep does it run? And if it is a combination, how does a state respond without escalating into open confrontation? These are not academic questions. They shape the trajectory of the region in real time. We will continue analyzing developments as they unfold. If you find this breakdown valuable, make sure to subscribe, press like, and leave your perspective in the comments because informed discussion matters when information itself becomes contested terrain. The next development could clarify the pattern or complicate it further. And in moments like this, clarity is rare, ambiguity is strategic, and silence can be louder than any explosion.